Welcome to Echocast and welcome to Dr. John Drea. Our Dr. Drea is a professor of business and the Ruth Badger Pixley Professor of Social Sciences at Illinois College, utilizing Echo 360 both in and outside the classroom through what he calls the choice model, which we'll learn more about here today. Dr. Drea, it's great to meet you here and have you on the show.
Pleasure to be here.
You've got I did a little bit of my research, and you have a long history in higher ed, but you also have been doing consulting with businesses and along the way. Let's start out just by, giving in your own words, just a little background on your path and specifically how it kind of found its way into this kind of area of kind of video learning and utilizing technology, and you're also creating a ton of content out there. So maybe just give us a little bit of the path of Dr. Drea here.
Sure. I started out my career in the first 11 years working in a community college, primarily in administrative roles and doing some teaching as well. Finished my doctorate degree in marketing and then went on to teach for a year at Montana State, and then taught for the next 19 years at Western Illinois University, where I was also a department chair and ended up being associate dean for the College of Business and Technology there before I technically retired at a certain age and came back to Illinois College, where I'm at now. This is the school where I earned my undergraduate degree. So I could come back and kind of give something back to the place that helped to make me what I am. In terms of some of the technologies, I've always, I'm one of those people who uses technology to solve a problem. I don't just tinker with technologies all the time. So when I see a problem, I try to find a technology that solves the problem, as opposed to taking a technology and then going and looking for something that I can solve with it. So I've used and created games for classrooms using technology. 3 of them I ended up selling to textbook companies that are bundled along with principals levels textbooks. And as you said, I've done a fair amount of consulting, both with third-party logistics companies, some work in higher ed, as well as I do a lot of work with my students with pro sports teams. I've been working a lot, mostly with Major League Baseball teams since 2004.
Well, we need you up here in Minnesota.
You've signed enough players lately. You're going to be fine.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Well, hey, I love that perspective that you just shared about using technology as a means toward an end. So often in any kind of technological field, but especially I think sometimes in ed tech, we're a bunch of hammers looking for nails. And so I love that perspective. If you think back to when specifically you started using video, and working with, a company like Echo 360, do you remember what was that problem that you were at the time trying to solve, and has that changed?
Yeah, I can remember the moment really specifically back in, I guess, about April of 2020, when COVID was just really kind of devastating what was going on in higher ed, and all the campuses were being closed and we were all sent home, and we're trying to figure out how in the world are we going to teach our classes, not just to finish out the semester, but how are we going to teach in the fall? And I listened to a podcast, a webinar that dealt with this question of that this was really a golden opportunity to try some experiments in the fall to see what would work. And I started looking at how I could help my college by being able to work with the problem that you have in a pandemic of needing to socially distance students, but you still have the constraint of the physical space in a classroom. So I started looking at this thing that I call the choice model, which was basically giving students the option each day of would they want to attend in person or would they want to attend through Zoom, and being able to switch back and forth, which is basically, at that point, that's basically just the high flex model, but then also using Echo 360 as a means of student engagement so that I could then embed questions into what I was doing for both groups simultaneously as a means of student engagement, so that I would basically cover material for 10 minutes, stop, and then everybody would have to answer a multiple choice question that covered the material that we had just talked about in class. So there was no way of kind of nodding off or zoning out during the class, and kind of brought people back. And that was what got it started, and we were able to basically, in the case of my classes, keep my class limits at the same level they were pre-pandemic, which in terms of a private college with all the financial challenges that they have during a pandemic, it helped them in terms of the staffing and everything, because my classes are typically always full, so I could keep all my enrollments and classes going and keep the revenue stream coming in.
How are you, or how have you now? It's been unfortunately a couple of years of having to deal with this. How have you found? Have there been specific like applications or just techniques that you've used? I mean, you mentioned the multiple choice kind of quizzes and stuff like that. Have there been certain things that have helped you as an instructor kind of ensure that you've got kind of an equal playing field regardless of where the students are choosing to show up that day?
Well, one of the things that I do is instead of waiting for students to raise hands to respond to questions, I just have to in Zoom, which is the what I'm using for the students to access it. I have to basically call on students in Zoom, because if I wait for them to interrupt me, I'm going to be waiting a long time. So I've got to do something to kind of pull them in. So I just tell them that they're actually more likely to be called on if they're in Zoom than they are if they're in the classroom. And I never know from one day to the other how many people I'm going to have in one location and how many I'm going to have in another. I was teaching a management class with 30 people enrolled, and I think there were a few days where I would have 28 people in the classroom and 2 on Zoom. And there was one day where I had 5 people in the classroom and the rest of them were all out in Zoom. It was a day where it was raining. But one of the things that again, you have to kind of reflect back on where we were at that time. I was very concerned about the level of fear that was in students back in the fall of 2020, that some students would just kind of blow off the whole thing with the pandemic, and it's no big deal, et cetera. I'm young, I'm healthy, nothing's ever going to happen to me. And there are others that just below the surface are worried, but they don't want to admit it. And this gave them the option that if they woke up on a day and they were just worried and there was something going on in their life where they just didn't want to have to make the choice between their education and feeling unsafe about their health, then they could have both, and they could stay where they were at and connect into the class. So it allowed that. The long-term application for this, assuming we get to, I don't know if we'll ever be completely post-pandemic, but we'll be at least in a managed state coming out of this, is I think it has the potential to help us to reach an entirely new population of students. You know, there's a group of students that falls in a gap between the ones who like fully online courses and the ones who want nothing to do with online courses. And this kind of bridges that gap of the student who can't commit to coming to campus for 16 weeks or 15 weeks to take a course. But they want that option, that if they are struggling in some way with the material and they want to come in and sit in a class, that they can come in and be in that class. It also, from an administrative standpoint, gets around the problem of when you want to offer a class, you want to offer a classroom class, and you want to offer an online class, and you can't afford to staff two separate sections of it. You could have a campus class that has 10 in it, and have maybe a dozen online students, and put them together in one of these and be just fine. So I think in that respect, it creates more economies of scale for a campus, and greater efficiencies. The thing this semester I've found is, as well as last semester too, is that when students get sick, whether it's from COVID or from anything else, and you're trying to figure out how to bring somebody up to speed, it's no big deal. You can be flat on your back and just pick up your phone and look at it, and you're good to go.
Yeah. Well, and just hearing you describe that, I would think, and I know you've worked with a lot of business clients in various capacities. What you're describing, I think, would have a lot of application outside education. We just think about people who have jobs that maybe don't necessarily need to be in a workplace environment every day. Have you had a chance to road test the choice model outside of education, or if you haven't, could you speculate on its utility even outside the classroom?
That's the plan for the fall semester. I'm teaching a sales class using this technique, and I'm hoping that we will end up enrolling a substantial number of people that are already in the workforce and want to either upgrade or sharpen their sales skills with something like this, because we can also record these things so that they can provide then a third option for those students. I've been reticent about recording what we do and then providing it to our campus students, because the students that we deal with on our campus are all traditional age students. And if I give them a recorded class as an option, unfortunately, the ones who shouldn't take that option probably will. And if they do that, then they miss the interactive part and the engagement part that Echo 360 actually adds to it. Because you can't then you're losing that functionality of having covering the material and stopping and asking the questions. That's all just recorded for them at that point. So for the sales class, what I've done is I've built the whole class so that the lectures are actually pre-recorded. And using Echo 360, the questions are embedded in the lecture so that it stops periodically. They have to answer the question, and the question is then downloaded into my gradebook. The answers for it are downloaded into my gradebook so that I get a score each day for how well somebody's doing. And there's, it also makes sure that everybody has covered the material prior to coming to class. So it's a great use of the technology, and it's a wonderful technology for improving learning.
Yeah, well, and I love what you're describing too. My mind went to this analogy a little bit of streaming a movie versus watching a movie in a theater. What you're doing in the way you're using the technology is you're allowing for a community to still happen. So whether or not, and so they're still part of that crowd, if you will, that's going through it at the same time, similar to, even when you're in a movie theater, you're all consuming the movie at the same time versus, if you're streaming it on your own, it's like, well, you're either paying attention or not. You're not necessarily having a shared experience. And so I think
that's a really good point, Jeff. I mean, that's, I think, one of the things that we have to be careful in online education that we don't lose is the sense of community in a class. It can't be just or it shouldn't be in most classes, a one-on-one relationship between just student and faculty member. I think sometimes some of the most interesting learning occurs in a horizontal level between from student to student. I'm teaching an online class now, And if you run a discussion group well, sometimes students will point out the flaws in each other's arguments. If they are polite about it, it's a great experience. And I've got a really great group right now in an online class.
That's great. That's great. Well, and that so we made it to the last question here of the of our little episode here, and it's kind of a big question. So if what you were just saying is the answer to it, you're more than welcome to use it. So this is a little segment we call Inspiration Point. Echo 360, we're all about inspired learning. And so we ask every Echocast guest this same last question, which is this: what is the biggest lesson you've learned along the way, or the biggest piece of advice maybe that you would want to impart on somebody else about getting people inspired to learn?
I think for me, the biggest thing is always focusing on what it is that students want out of an education. And that is that everybody comes to your classroom wanting to get from where they are to where they want to be. And that where they want to be is a little bit different from everybody. But when everybody comes to your class, whether it's in person or online, they don't want to leave at the same level that they came in. Whether they will admit it or not, everybody is looking for some kind of a transformation. If they just wanted to come in, get their 3 credits and leave, they could choose somebody far easier and with far less work than coming to most of our campuses. You buy that kind of stuff on, just through some mail order shop. So it's focusing on that and then delivering to students what they need and not necessarily what they're asking for. And sometimes what students need is to be challenged, and challenged within reason on things, because I think sometimes we don't know what we're capable of until we are asked to do it, and when we have to be challenged a little bit, and then we have to be supported in the process. I think that's probably the biggest thing from just a personal standpoint. The thing I would suggest to folks is that keep in mind of why we're here and why we're doing what we're doing. This is all about students. So whatever's in the best interest of students, that's what we need to be doing. Look at the technology, and bottom line is, if it helps to do a better job of helping students to learn and get to where they need to go, then learn it. I mean, that's why we're here. And this is a technology that works for students and helps them to learn better.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, I really want to thank you, Dr. John Drea, for joining us here on Echocast and sharing your creativity and your commitment. And it comes through loud and clear. It's just your deep, authentic commitment to learning in those students. So we're going to let Dr. Drea go, but everybody else stick around for a quick demonstration now of some of the applications that he referenced in this Echocast. And you can always go to echo360.com for more episodes and resources to create your inspired learning experiences.
Here's a quick demonstration of an Echo 360 solution related to this episode of Echocast. Reach out to us at echo360.com to learn more.
When this feature has been turned on by your institution, Echo 360's discussion tool can be used with any video shared via Echo 360. For video or presentations shared to a class, the discussion feature is represented by blue speech bubbles at the top of the classroom screen. And all discussions will be visible to all students in that class. Click on the double speech bubble to view any discussions already started. A panel will open on the right-hand side of the screen displaying all discussion questions. Any comments already posted can be upvoted by clicking on the thumbs up icon, And any upvotes from the instructor will appear to students with text saying "Instructor endorsed." Students can also bookmark comments to appear in their study guide. To respond to a post, click on the discussion to open a panel for that particular thread. Click on the blue "Respond to this question" button. You can then respond to the post with a comment, add a link to new content, or attach a file. When done, click Post. The single speech bubble with a blue cross can be clicked on to ask a new question, start a discussion, or share a link. Any question or comment added can be tagged with a video timecode or presentation slide number to pinpoint the exact location for others, and can also be toggled to post anonymously. Anonymously means that a name is hidden from other contributors, yet can still be viewed by instructors. For video embedded in the LMS, the underscored word "discussion" appears at the bottom of the video. Click on Discussion and a panel will open. Click on the comment box to add a new question, comment, or attach other content. Names can be hidden from other contributors by toggling the Hide My Name button. Students and instructors can respond or upvote the comments by using the thumbs up and speech bubble icons within the comment section. With embedded video content, student names will be visible to instructors and can be hidden by using the Hide Names button at the top of the discussions. This is helpful if instructors wish to screen share parts of the discussion with students.
Thanks for tuning in to Echocast. For more information on these and other inspired learning solutions, visit us at echo360.com.